If you decide to get a pool installed, whether it be in ground or above ground, a shed, if you're going to put an addition onto your house, hopefully you're looking to see if you need a permit. If you're living on septic or well water, God, you definitely want to look into getting a permit. A lot of people don't realize if you just decide to add something on, it could affect a lot of other things. And on this episode of Conversations with Rich Bennett, I sat down with the Harford County Health Department and we talked about permits. And I was actually surprised and blown away, to be honest with you, about some of the things that the health department is involved in when it comes to building permits. Because you look at building permits, you don't think of the health department. But if you have something like, if you're living on septic and you're adding a bedroom and an addition in, that's going to affect the flow. And you need to get a permit. The health department will come out and check that to make sure you can do it. Another thing, let's say that you want to put a shed down, a big shed. Well, and again, a lot of this has to do with septic and well, which there's a lot of them in Harford County. You need to know where your present one is, and if there was an old one, you need to know that too. People don't realize all the things that tie into this stuff. And if you're going to buy a house, make sure you don't, you can pull up the records to find a site permit to see what was installed and so forth. So again, on this episode of Conversations with Rich Bennett, I had the opportunity to sit down with a round table of people from the Harford County Health Department to discuss building permits. Hope you enjoyed the conversation.
Coming to you from the Freedom Federal Credit Union Studios, Harford County Living presents Conversations with Rich Bennett.
Come on.
You're faster than me.
Guys.
Yeah, that was quick.
We've been
I got a
together.
steak on mine. It's 24th and 13th.
Oh, man, you already said it. I was going to ask her if she remembered the date. So today I'm sitting here with my friends at the Harford County Health Department, and we're going to talk about something that, God, I got a ton of questions for. Building permits, mainly residential, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go around the table, starting on my left, have everybody introduce themselves, and then we'll get right into this.
All right, I'm Brian Phipps with Harford County Health Department, and I guess my main role here is commercial permit review.
Joe DeLizio, Harford County Health.
Lauren Daniels, Harford County Health. I oversee commercial and residential building permit.
We're letting her on, even though she likes true crime and not regular podcasts.
I love
like
it.
this.
I love my true crime.
Oh, Ronnie Nassar, Public Information Officer, Health Policy Analyst.
Sarah Will, I'm the Communications Specialist at the Harford County Health Department.
Adam Lanfear, Harford County Health Department. I mainly focus on residential building permits.
My name is Keith Klug. I'm training into reviewing residential building permits.
Lisa Kalama, and I try to manage this group of crazy people. And they work really hard every day. We get a lot of building permits. We probably process close to about 2,000 permits a year. So
Wow.
that's what we do.
So building permits and residential, I know it's during COVID, you guys are probably busy, weren't you?
Yeah, we had a major influx during COVID with people, staying home, and they wanted to fix up their houses because they're there. They wanted more rooms, decks, in-ground pools, everything. They just wanted to make their house like a better living situation since they're there all the time.
And luckily, most of them did it before lumber started going up in price, right?
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah. Pools are still like a year out.
Huh?
In-ground pools, yeah. Some in-ground pools are still a year out. They're putting in permits now. They won't build them until next year.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That many people are getting in-ground pools?
Yeah. We get so many in-ground pool permits.
So, all right, what about above ground? You need a permit for that as well, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of a differentiation we go through with building permits with in-ground pools versus above ground. They're a little bit different in how they work.
Right.
Above ground pools, a little less stringent on what's needed when we do our reviews. In-ground pools, because they're a really permanent structure, they're taking up a large portion of your property. It's a more strict review that we have to go through because we want to make sure that you're not ruining part of your property that needs to be used in the future for
Right.
anything.
And with I guess it depends on the size of the property, because aren't there some restrictions, like as far as, I don't know, trees and plants that sometimes you have to plant certain types of trees or whatever?
Yeah, you have to be careful with in-ground pools for, stuff like erosion, whatever. Lots of retaining walls, you usually have to go with them with grading. Just making sure that everything's good. The main thing we look at with building permits is private well and septic systems. There's a lot of Harford County that's on private wells, private septic systems. And not many homeowners kind of understand just kind of what goes into that and what's needed for like the future and protecting them, especially with these in-ground pools.
Yeah, that would be kind of, oof. I guess that's when you see the big trucks come in and filling the pools up.
Yeah, there's a lot of abandonment. So the issue of like in-ground pools is they go in, they take up space in your property that needs to be that could be used for future repairs for your septic system,
Right.
or sometimes you need to drill a new well down the line. But also once they fill them up, the area that in-ground pool was in can't be used in the future for any sort of repair system because they actually disturbed all the soils. So what we do when we do in-ground pools is we look heavily into where the pool's going, making sure that there's an area on the property for future repair systems for your septic, make sure it meets your setbacks for your wells, your septic systems, so it doesn't impact negatively any part of your septic system
Right.
or your well. That you can also in the future, when you need to replace your septic system, because they all have lifespans on them, that we do have a future area for you to put in a septic system and not just a no choice other than some of the alternative or innovative systems.
I was gonna say too, because with septic systems, I mean, throughout the years, hasn't like the codes or whatever changed for them? I mean, it seemed like before they would take up the whole backyard, but I don't know if they're more compact now or what.
Yeah, so there's something called, properties will have something called a septic reserve area. They're actually put into the land records. So if you like pulled your land plat, you'd see a septic reserve area for the most part. And the sizing of them changed depending on when the actual lot was made.
Right.
Really, really old properties will not have a septic reserve area. Then you go up a little bit and they start having 40,000 square feet is how much you need for a septic reserve area, which is massive. And then you go a little bit further into the future and you only needed 20,000 square feet for your septic reserve area. And then nowadays you need 10,000 square feet for your septic reserve area at the minimum, or whatever is necessary to fit in your repair systems. So that's kind of how we look at things, and depending on how big your septic reserve area is can really limit you on what you can build on your property, because
Right.
no permanent structures are allowed to be built within a septic reserve area, because that area is reserved for all future septic systems, which can kind of be a run-in for a lot of homeowners that don't realize that they have a 40,000, they go to build in-ground pool, a garage. I mean, even a shed on a concrete basing is considered a permanent structure.
Right.
And then we have to tell them, hey, no, you have this 40,000 square foot septic reserve area, you're not allowed to build in it.
Wow.
And then they have to do things there's options that they have with moving around structures, or they can sometimes alter their septic reserve area, but that process is pretty involved because you're changing land records at that point.
And for those that have septic and well, the wells can't be that close to the septic, right?
So the basic setback is 100 feet to your septic system from your existing well, as long as that well is above gradient to your septic system, above grade.
Oh.
If that well is down gradient from your septic system, it needs to be 200 feet. And the reason behind that is what happens with your septic system. You have your runoff, into the soils and everything. You want to make sure that if anything happens with your septic system, it starts leaking or just any issues, you don't want like non-treated water running into your well that could
Right.
you then uptake and drink. So we have setbacks to be far enough away from your well. It's 100 feet usually, or 200 feet if the well is down gradient.
So if somebody's doing all that and putting a pool in, they better have a good amount of property, it sounds like.
Yeah, we have a lot of ours trickier permits that come up is the fact of there's a lot of lots that were created years and years and years ago that were just very small lots. They were designed to have a well, one septic system, and maybe a repair. And they thought back in like the 50s or 60s
Right.
when they made them, well, they'll just get public water and sewer eventually. We really don't have to worry about the future of septic systems. And septic systems last a good amount of years. Conservative estimates about 20 years, but we've had septic systems in the property that are 40 or 50 years old.
Wow.
But now we're kind of reaching the point of those lots, people want to build on them, they want to add to them, or they just want to repair their septic system. And we're running into the issue of they weren't really designed for a second septic system or a third septic system or even a fourth septic system. And then we kind of have to deal with that as well and kind of work our way through it.
So when somebody needs a new septic system, is the old one taken out? How's that work?
Yeah, so what happens kind of the lifetime of a septic system is when it's seen as failing, and there's kind of a bunch of different ways you can know your septic system's failing. You can get it certified, someone will go out and they can see it then, but like really bad failures, you'll actually like see it on the surface. You'll see like ponding, you'll see grass is turning really green, you can smell it. When that happens, they'll put in for a repair system to be put in, and another division we work closely with is the soil percolation division. They'll do perk test, which is how they kind of size a septic system, and they'll do a special repair perk test. At that point, they'll do the sizing, they'll figure it out, and then when they know everything for the repair system, the old system will be like I guess we'll preface this with how the septic system actually works is you have your septic tank where all your refuse from the house goes into.
Mm-hmm.
The solids then fall out into the septic tank, and that's why you need to get it pumped out on a frequent basis, is to get rid of those. And then the liquid will go from the septic tank into the drain fields. And what happens is how a drain field works is there's some amount of depth, usually around average about 10 feet deep.
Right.
And the liquid will go into the top of the drain fields, and then it will trickle down through this stone bed that was put in. And by the time it gets down to the bottom, because of how the soils work, the water that come off should be clean. And that's how a septic system sort of works. So when a septic drain fields fail, usually they're just used up, they're filled with stuff, you can't use them anymore. They'll just close off the drain field so you can't access them anymore. And then the tank will then be routed over to the new drain fields. Sometimes a new tank has to be put in if the tank's leaking, or the area that the new septic system go, you can't route it normally. But usually drain fields are left in the ground after used up, because you're talking about down to
bucks.
Yeah, you're talking about very, very expensive to be able to scrape them out and clean up that area, and just it's really
scrape them out.
Yeah, you're talking about 10 feet of stone. Like you would have to dig up all of that stone and all of the stuff that gets into it. Like, so usually they're just left in the ground, and that area then, because it's for 20 years or more has been soaking up all this stuff, it can't be used anymore as a repair system. So you got to move to a new area of the property.
Sounds like a dirty job from Mike Rowe. God, that's got to be disgusting. All right, so when somebody comes in, right, first of all, first question, I'm going to ask this first. Because a lot of people are probably thinking this, and I've thought of that. It's one of the first things I thought of. Building permits. Why are they affiliated with the health department?
Yeah, people ask me that all the time. Like, I show up to people's property, and they're like, "You're at the health department? Why are you here?" And I'm like, "Well," and you give them the spiel. So we are the environmental health side of things. So what we look at is making sure that the water you're drinking is safe to drink, protecting you and the environment around you, and your septic system is good, so you're not contaminating other areas, you're not contaminating your own drinking water. So we look at private wells, private septic systems, and a lot of the time in Hartford County, you'll have both if you have one of them. There's some areas that will have one or the other, but for the most part, you'll have both if you have them. And so what we really look at is we want to make sure that when you're doing your building permits, whatever you're building is not going to damage your well, it's not going to damage your septic system. Because if you damage your septic system, well, it's going to fail, and then you're going to have to put in a brand new septic system prematurely, which is really expensive and also can lead to issues in the future with future repairs. And you really don't want to damage your well because that's your drinking water. If you start getting stuff into your drinking water, you're
That's
gonna
not good.
yeah. you don't want bacteria in your water. You don't want E. coli in your water.
Right.
So that's what we really look for.
That makes perfect sense now. I mean,
Yeah, people think that we're trying to hold them up. The health department gets blamed, though, I can't do this, or
right.
they're making me go through this and that. But we're really looking out for the best interest of the homeowner. We're
And
protecting
the people around them,
and
too.
the people around them. We're protecting their property. We're protecting the value of their property. So with a little bit of education, a lot of times we can kind of explain what's going on, and then the homeowner gets on board with us. But
Right.
it puts us in a difficult situation a lot of times.
And speaking of which, you homeowners out there, if you do get a pool, make sure you call your insurance company and let them know too. And if you get one taken out, call them as well. So with the building permits, septic, pool, whatever, you actually go out on site first?
Probably 90% of our building permits, I'm out on site before
Really?
they get approved. So kind of how the permit process works in Hartford County is whoever applicant for the building permit will put in through the county,
Mhm.
and then it gets distributed to different divisions that look over it. Department of Inspections, License Permits, Planning and Zoning, and then usually us if there's a private well septic system. A lot of what the other departments do is they'll do a review in the beginning of the plans and everything, and then they'll do all of their inspections after the building permit, after the construction. But we have to look beforehand, make sure
Right.
it meets all of our setbacks. We don't have issues with your well, your septic system. So yeah, you'll just see me around the county, just showing up to people's houses, being like, I'm here to look at your well, look at your septic system.
I'm not doing anything outside yet, just to let you know. So.
Yeah, so a lot of our review is in the beginning, and then after the construction, we usually have some requirements.
Mm-hmm.
And the requirements afterwards are really for like public safety, public health. Whenever plumbing lines get opened up, if you're doing any work inside, we require a bacteria water sample after construction to make sure that when your plumbing lines were opened up and they were doing construction, adding a bathroom, renovating a bathroom, whatever, nothing contaminated your water supply, because you want to make sure that they didn't accidentally open the wells, something
Right.
got introduced, and now you're drinking water that's not safe to drink. So we require those, and that's just to make sure that everything was good. Your water is still fine after you. Those are pretty easy to do. But beforehand, yeah, we look at setbacks. We make sure there's no issues with your septic system, your well. Making sure your current septic system is sized correctly for any of your future plans.
Right.
A lot of people like to add a bedroom or two eventually down the line at their house. And septic systems are sized on two things: number of bedrooms and your soil percolation test that was conducted at some time.
Number of bedrooms?
Number of bedrooms is actually how you size septic systems.
Interesting.
And that comes down from state COMAR regulations. But
And the reason for that is, the more bedrooms you have, the more people you have living there.
Right.
The more people, the more waste you're going to produce. So
Okay.
so the systems have to
Yeah.
be sized accordingly.
so when someone goes and says they have a 3-bedroom house and they want to add a bedroom, go up to 4, well, that changes things because maybe your tank's not the correct size for a 4-bedroom, maybe your drain fields aren't enough for a 4-bedroom, and if you're not sized correctly and you put a strenuous load on that system over time, it's going to fail prematurely and it's going to cause all these issues. We're trying to make sure that nothing bad happens because you overstrained your system, and make sure,
Right.
and so you don't, down the line you think everything's good and then suddenly your septic system's failing. You got to put all the money into repairing a septic system that, if just beforehand, before you did the work, if you did some upgrades for it, everything would be good in the future.
Can I add something real quick too?
No. Yeah, of course, go ahead.
But also we're looking out for the future of the house in terms of resale.
Right.
So we've had times where 2 people are living in a house and they want to resell it. And it's a 3-bedroom, put on a 4th bedroom to, bolster the sale of the house. So we require these things so when they sell it, if 4 people move in, that it's prepared for them as well.
That makes sense too. Now, when you say put on a 4th bedroom, you're talking about added to the house, so an addition.
So you could add additions, but a lot of times someone will just like renovate the inside of the house and turn, like, let's say an office space or an unused attic is one I'm working on right now.
So
and they're
people
turning
need
it into a
building
bedroom.
permits for that.
Yep.
Really?
Because what we have records on every house on a well and septic system for the most part, depending on the age. And when we size a septic system, it will mark down what it's sized for. It's sized for a 3-bedroom house. It's sized for a 4-bedroom. If you're going to change the number of bedrooms, you need a building permit because then legally the number of bedrooms are changing. So we've run into issues before where years and years and years and years ago, someone didn't take out a building permit. The house is registered as 3 bedrooms. Now it's 4 bedrooms. And now someone wants to come in and say, hey, my 4-bedroom house, I want to make it a 5-bedroom house. And we're like, it's supposed to be a 3-bedroom house. So then they have to do all this stuff. Because really it comes down to, if you put kind of what Keith was saying there is, if 2 people are living in a 3-bedroom house and then they downline sell it, but they put on a 4th bedroom, and then 8 people show up because you can have like 2 people per bedroom. That's a very different load than having 2 people living in the house versus even 4 people living in a house, and that's gonna change how your septic system works, how it functions, and how long it's gonna last.
Okay, so maybe I'm getting confused here. So if somebody, like when I bought my house, it's 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, 3-bedroom house, whatever. But now there's only basically me and my wife and my daughter, and the 1-bedroom is now my wife's office. But we didn't have to convert anything, so it's still considered a bedroom, right?
Yeah, it's still considered a bedroom. When you go to sell it, it's still like your real estate agent or whoever is going to say, like, yeah, it's a 4-bedroom house.
Okay.
It's more the fact of if you're converting up the number of bedrooms.
Okay.
If you're saying, let's say, a lot of times people have like an unfinished basement or unfinished attic or something, and they're like, well, I'm going to finish it, and it's going to be a bedroom. Then we have to take a much deeper look into it, because now you're taking, we call it an increase in flow, because it's an increase of waste. And that's what we look at it. We say, okay, it was 3 bedrooms, it's going to 4 bedrooms. How's that going to impact the well? How's that going to impact the septic system? Does the septic tank need to be upgraded to handle this? Does the drain fields need to be upgraded to handle this? And that's kind of what we look at for, because we want to make sure everything's safe, we don't have any issues, and it can sustain it. Some areas of the county are notoriously bad for their soil profiles, which is how we size, and sometimes things can't really always go the way the homeowner wants it because, well, just how the soils work.
The worst thing that can happen is someone puts this beautiful brand new master bedroom addition and the house is beautiful, and they walk outside and they've got septic, sitting in their backyard, or their toilets won't flush. And they've just put all this money, and now they've got this house has major issues. So that's really what we try to avoid.
Yeah, so we try to do more upfront looks at things because we would rather make sure everything's working up front, and maybe we tell you to do some upgrades to your system up front because everything's good at that point, instead of you spent $100,000 on an addition and then we tell you, okay, now your septic system's failing, you need to put more money in to fix this. We'd rather tell you beforehand, hey, do these upgrades, get this repaired, and then you can get your addition, everything should be good, instead of, hey, you just spent all of your money and now all this stuff is critically failing and has issues. So we're trying to just look out for the health of everyone around you and the property and just make sure everything's going well.
All right, so for interior work, if you're adding a bedroom, you need a permit. For what else would you need a permit for? Just for interior, not outside or addition, but for interior.
Well, I would probably recommend contacting the county on that, because they're the ones who are going to determine if a building permit's required or not.
Not you guys.
No.
Okay.
We're just a review agency, so what happens is the county will intake any permit they deem needs a permit. And then once they intake it, they will separate it out to the different divisions that review it. And we're just one of those.
Oh, okay.
So we just, like, if it's on a private well, private septic system, it comes to us. And we do a review, and sometimes those reviews are incredibly detailed and require a lot of things, and sometimes they're pretty quick and easy. It really just depends on what you want to do with your house.
Right.
Because our building permits range from anything from massive additions to brand new houses to sheds, like a small shed that you can buy at Home Depot and just drop off on the property. No foundation, nothing like that.
Speaking of sheds, so I'm not getting one yet. That's my plan. That's my goal. My goal is because I want to get a shed for out back and turn into a podcast studio. So what do I need to? Because I'm sure I'm going to have to call you guys because of water flow and everything. So what do I need to look out for, and why would you guys come?
Yeah.
And play with that.
For something like that, we would consider it to be a. It would probably fall under the sense of a pole barn or a garage, is where we look at it, because I'm going to guess you want to put a bathroom in it, so you can.
No.
You don't want no water in it.
No.
Oh, that's
Just
even
a
easier.
refrigerator to hold
Yeah.
water.
So just some electricity. So what we look for at that point is we first determine if it's
electricity. Yes, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah.
We first determine if it's a permanent structure or a non-permanent structure. Very small sheds that you're storing maybe some lawn supplies in,
Right.
on like a gravel base, timber base, something like that. It's a non-permanent structure. It's a little bit less stringent because you can always pick that thing up and move it if you ever need to.
The wind can blow it over. It's not permanent.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
And if you're putting it on some sort of concrete basing, footers in the ground, it's considered a permanent structure because you
Right.
can't really move it. And the fact of the matter is, like, those permanent structures, they're heavy, and they will compact the ground underneath of them. So that area that it is in can't be used for a septic system anymore in the future because the ground's really compacted. It won't have the good flow anymore, the water running through it. So that's what we look for. But the most important thing with a building permit that we review is a good site plan.
Mm-hmm.
So, and not a lot of people kind of know exactly what we need on site plans because we're looking for very specific things.
Right.
On a site plan, what we need to see to do our review is we need to see what's already existing on the property. So the house, if there's already existing structures on it, those need to be shown. Where the well is needs to be shown, and where the septic system is really needs to be shown on our site plan. Because not only are we looking at impact on the well and septic, we also have setbacks to wells and septics that we need to make sure are met.
Right.
Any sort of foundation needs to be 30 feet from your well. State regulation needs to be 30 feet from your well. From your septic tank, things need to be 20 feet from your septic tank. They need to be 30 feet from your septic drain fields. If you have a recorded septic reserve area, they need to be 30 feet from your recorded septic reserve area. And just kind of how our process goes is we try to move through these building permits as efficiently as we can. We don't want to hold up the builders. We don't want to hold up the homeowners. But when we get a lot of site plans in where nothing's shown, just maybe we want to put a shed in the back corner of our house, and we're like, well, where's your well? Where's your septic system? Do
Right.
you have an SOA? And then we have to majorly dig through our files. We have to contact the homeowner.
Takes time.
And we have to get upgraded. So we can't fully do a review unless we have all that on a site plan. So we have proof of, okay, we're allowing this because by the site plan submitted, it meets all of our setbacks. So a lot of the times, a lot of our lag time on these building permits is just me contacting the contractor or the homeowner being like, listen, everything appears to be good, but we can't tell exactly where your drain fields are.
Right.
Or we can't exactly tell where your well is. And because we can't tell where they exactly are, and we don't have a site plan for it, you need to give us a new site plan. And then that takes time for the new site plan to be made by whoever can make it, and then get back to us and we do a review. So the best thing we can offer people is what I tell them is when they call us and ask questions about, I want to do a future building permit. I'm like, listen, the best thing you can do is submit a good site plan. Because then all of our questions should be answered by the site plan. Any questions we do have should be pretty quick and easy ones to answer. But the site plan kind of boils down to the most important part.
Okay, with something like that, what if like with me, I'm on public water and public sewage.
Mm-hmm.
But I would still need a site plan there, right? Because you have, what's the drain, Chesapeake Bay drainage.
So public
Don't
water
want
and public
anything going
sewer.
down there, right? I mean,
Yeah. Public water and public sewer are my favorite type of building permits because I don't do anything with them.
Oh.
If it's on public water and public sewer, health department doesn't get involved because we only look at private well and private septic systems.
Oh, so it has nothing to do with
Yep.
like the water and bay and all that.
So other divisions will look over that, planning
Okay.
and zoning, DILP, They'll look over it, but we won't get involved if it's on public water and sewer.
Okay.
Because we don't. It's just not part of something that we do the review of,
Except for demolition.
except for demos.
If you're gonna demo a house, we do.
Demo a house?
Happens
Well,
all
yeah,
the time.
some people do. Yeah.
Yeah.
never mind.
So we have a lot of demo permits are another thing that we also do. So yeah, we range from demoing structures all the way up to building brand new houses, and anything in between.
Well, it makes sense now because with demo, especially a lot of these older houses have asbestos.
Yeah,
So is that-
you run through a whole environmental assessment. And two things about demolition. One, you have to really prepare the house to demo, and part of it is looking for asbestos.
Right.
And any hazmats, and what are they gonna do with the well and septic? Can you rebuild? Some of these houses they can restore,
But they can't rebuild.
and sometimes they not be able to rebuild. Depends on their septic system. So
Wow.
the easy ones are the house is falling down, it's unsafe, and you gotta get rid of it anyways. But when you do a demo, you wanna make sure they can rebuild, and what's it gonna take to rebuild. Also, we can do fire training on a house. That's interesting. Maybe not in your maybe not in your neighborhood. But
No, I think there has been
there has
some.
been.
Yeah.
There has been. But you know, the houses in close proximity are a problem.
Oh no, not that close. But I mean, I have seen them in Joppa and Joppa before.
So with demo, you want to make sure they can rebuild if they can, and you know whether if they can or it's questionable, they can restore.
Mhm.
So that's another avenue of educating them and helping them. And we've run into problems where they've taken a house down, they can't rebuild. They're on holding tanks.
Wow.
So
Yeah, to kind of
it can't happen.
Yeah, to go off that one, holding tanks is the end of the line septic system. I'm quotating that. I was like, wait a second, we're on a podcast. So what happens is
People heard your fingers. That's
yeah,
okay.
I hope so. But your normal septic system is something we call a conventional deep trench system. And it's just the conventional system, as long as the perk tests are good, that's what they put in. Pretty run of the mill. If you have issues with your soil percolation test, if the soils are too fast or too slow in taking up water, which can be an issue, you move into something called alternative or innovative systems, which are a little bit more stringent, they're harder to build, they're specialty systems. They have some limiting factors on what you can do on your property once you have a type of system like that. The final type of system is called a holding tank. They're not really a septic system because what it is it's literally a giant holding tank in the ground, and all of your stuff goes into the holding tank and then it needs to get pumped out when it needs to get pumped out. And the issues with holding tanks are the minute you have a holding tank, you have to sign an agreement, it goes in the records that you have holding tanks. The minute your property is on holding tanks, you cannot change the flow, so no adding bedrooms, and you cannot change the footprint of your house. Yeah, they're the last line. If we can't get any other system in, you go on holding tank. So what we try to do is, this is why building permits kind of matter too, is if you start building up a ton of stuff on your property and you keep taking away areas that could be used as repair, eventually you're not going to have anything, and then you're going to have to go to this system, and then you can't do anything. It's people don't like holding tanks. They're expensive to uptake. They're expensive to put in.
I didn't realize there was a difference.
Yeah. So that's why we kind of are really stringent, and we try our best to looking for future repair systems, because we don't want you to go on holding tanks. We don't want you to go on alternative or innovative systems if you don't have to. We want to do the best system that works the best for everyone around, and also is not incredibly expensive for the homeowner to deal with. So the best way to do that is by making sure your property has future repair systems.
PIA request. I have that written down. Yes. What is PIA?
So it's the Public Information Act form.
I knew that.
Listen, I've been here for like 2 years now, and I figured that out like probably 6 months ago what it stood for. So don't worry about it. So what it is it's a all of our records on like your property for what's in the ground, as for your septic system, your well, it's public information. You can pull your records if you want to know what's on your property. And we have a form on our website. It's really easy. You fill it out, you specify what you want, you send it in, and we'll send you those records. What's really good about them is if you're planning to build something, take out a building permit for whatever you want on your property, you can contact us, get our information, and we should be able to tell you whatever records we have, which are good for you doing your site plan for your building permit. You can get where your drain fields are, what type of septic system you have, where your well is, what information we have on your well. So when you're developing your site plan and you're looking, okay, I don't know where my septic system is, but I need to put it down on the site plan so they can do the review. Well, if you do a PIA request form, we can give you what records we have on your septic system, which should help you do your site plan. But also, it's nice to know in the future so you know, okay, this is what I currently have in the ground. You can then call us and be like, hey, this is what I have currently. I did a PIA request. What's that good for? And we can kind of talk to you about it. But it just gives you information on what you have currently. And the more information, the better, I really think. 'Cause
Right.
if you can put down on site plans where your well are, where your septic system are, it makes the reviews smoother and better. We're not bugging you as much.
I mean, we have a lot of homeowners that really don't know where their systems are located.
What?
You know, so they come in, especially if they've come from, where they've been on public systems, they don't
Right.
even know what a septic system is. They don't know what a well is. We have some wells that are actually buried, so you can't see them. You can't look at a property and say, oh, your well's over here. So having the records here and having access to them really helps the homeowners. They can figure out where their systems are, where the well is, and they can kind of do their own site plan and figure out, I can't put my addition here because my well might be right under there.
Right.
So
I've had a lot of people know just enough about their septic system to know that they have like a septic tank, but they don't realize that after the septic tank comes drain fields. They're like, well, I'm 20 feet away from my septic tank for this garage, and then I have to be the one to break the news to them, being like, yeah, but you have 4 50-foot trenches going off that septic tank right underneath where you want to put the garage.
Ooh.
So doing a little bit of like just the background information, and we're happy to provide whatever information we have for you to do it, can be really helpful on how you want to design where you want to put things on your property, and also just be safe with them. Like, you don't want to drive a car over top of your drain fields every single day, because that will start compacting them.
Yeah.
So just having that information on where your well is, where your septic is, when it was put in, so you can have in the back of your head of, okay, my septic system's 40 years old now. I better start just preparing in the back of my head that eventually it's probably going to need to get repaired, so I can start, thinking about that, start building a nest egg and being like, when this septic system fails, it's not a surprise to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just I walk out one day and I'm like, how am I going to raise the money to fix this septic system? So,
All right, what happens in this case? Because, some homeowners, for some reason, think they don't have to deal with permits and all. Let's say somebody buys a house and they need to get something done, whether it's septic, put in a shed or whatever, and the site plan that they provide does not, there's other stuff there that you guys don't know about.
So it actually happens more frequently than you would think, that just years ago, they were a little less stringent on what was needed, or people would just build without permits. And the worry it comes into is exactly like what's out there. So usually what I'll do is when I make site visits, I'll bring the file with me and I'll be like, okay, this has been permitted, check off this. And then sometimes I'll come to it like, well, this shed is not supposed to be here. We don't have a permit for it. I don't know when it showed up. And then we really have to look at it, because those structures being there, if they're permanent structures, really start eating away at what now can be put out there. And the way we look at it is, well, if it's out there, and now what are we going to do in the future? And it's not an easy thing to deal with, but we try our best. Like, we're not out there to like punish homeowners.
Right.
A lot of the time, someone will buy a house and they won't check the records, and they won't realize that shed wasn't permitted at one time. We're not here to like get you in trouble, like that. We're just here for your safety and your interests. So sometimes things need to be moved. Sometimes things need to be taken down. And that's another just beautiful thing about the PIA request is you can ask on what records we have on building permits for a property.
Right.
So if you're planning to buy a house, I would seriously consider doing a PIA request for that house. And you can say if they have a shed in the background, make sure they got permitted for that shed. So then you don't run into an issue later down the line and you get caught with a shed that was never permitted.
Yeah.
So
It's a lot of it's buyer beware, and we've got a lot of really good real estate agents that they come in if they're putting a house up for sale, they'll come in and request the records, so they have that to show to any clients that are interested in purchasing a house. But really, you need to do yourself due diligence and research the properties before you pay a lot of money for a house.
Right.
I mean, your mortgage is the biggest thing you're going to spend your money on, and you got to really look ahead and see what's there and make sure that the property can sustain what you want to do if you have ideas of putting a pool or whatever. So a lot of buyer beware. Do the research ahead of time.
So what can the buyer do if they really want that property and there is a pool or a shed there that's not coming up in the public records?
yeah, so what will happen is what will happen is usually the county usually handles this because we're just one of the review
Right.
agencies.
Okay.
But the county will say, hey, you have an in-ground pool that was built back there. We don't exactly know when, but it never had a permit pulled for it. Pull a permit for it. And
So they get okay.
they'll get a permit out, and it's actually marked down that it's an existing structure.
Okay.
And we'll do a review, treating it like it's an existing structure, and I'll make sure it meets all the setbacks. We don't have any issues. Sometimes some variances might need to be signed, but that's how we just go through the review when it being there.
Right.
Hopefully, everything's okay. It meets all the
Knock on
setbacks. Knock on wood. But that's why I always the stress is like do the research, because sometimes it has major issues, like it's over top your septic system or it's too close or whatever, and then it comes back to the fact of like sometimes we say we can't approve it. It's not approvable.
Right.
And then we say that, and then it goes back to the county, and the county kind of makes their decisions on how they move forward with it, usually through planning and zoning or Department of Inspections, License and Permits. But it's come up sometimes that we can't approve a building permit because for whatever reason we just can't. And it's an existing structure, and at that point it's really the county's choice on how they're going to pursue a non-permitted structure.
So if somebody wants to build a shed, add on anything, and they need a permit, they don't contact you guys. They contact the county first, and then the county will contact
Hartford County Permits Office.
Okay.
And they'll just submit a building permit. Kind of what comes with a building permit is they'll give them like design plans for whatever it is, and then a site plan. And then when the county gets it, they'll send it out to the different divisions that review it. Us being one of them, we'll get anything that was submitted, and then we'll do a review. And that's kind of why we just stress like, do some information digging beforehand.
Right.
Make a good site plan, because if you can give us good information and a good site plan, everything moves a lot more smoothly. We can work through them faster. We can work through them more efficiently, and then we can get you going on your building permit better. But when we have hiccups with not good site plans, or the homeowner doesn't know what's out there, we have to get all that from the homeowner, and it just takes more time. It's more effort on the homeowner. It's more effort on us.
Puts the building project off more. And
Yeah.
Could go, depending on the time of the season, could put it off even more too, I would think.
Yeah, we've had ones that have got a building permit 6 months ago, and I just got it approved because it took them 6 months to get all the information that they needed because things got busy.
And a permit's only good for a certain amount of time, right?
Mm-hmm. You can ask for extensions. That's through the county as well, but you don't want your permit to expire out because then you're going to have to start the process all over again. But yeah, doing getting as much information as you can through these PIAs, through calling us, and creating the best site plan you can is going to be the best thing for you, because it's going to make everything just faster,
Right.
smoother, more efficient.
So when somebody applies for a permit and then you guys become involved, I take it you call the homeowner and then schedule an appointment and go out?
Yeah, so usually what happens is if I have questions, there's usually a, when you submit a building permit, there will be a point of contact.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's the homeowner, sometimes it's
Contractor.
the applicant or the contractor.
Yeah.
And usually if I have questions, I'll send it to both the contractor and the homeowner, so everyone's on the same page of what we're requesting, why it's going to take a couple more days to do a review or
Right.
whatever, because we're requesting things. For site plans, site visits, if like I need something very specific, sometimes like an in-ground pool, I'll want them to stake out where the in-ground pool is going to go, so then I can do my measurements and verify my measurements.
Yeah, that would make it a lot easier.
Yeah, and so for those, I'll call and be like, hey, I need the pool staked out so I can go and make sure it meets the distance to the septic tank or the well or whatever
Right.
it is. And I'm like, just give me a call back, send me an email when it's staked out, and then I'll come out and see it. Some things like a shed, where I have good records, I have a good site plan.
Mhm.
I can just take that. I can go out. I don't need the homeowner there, like really, and I'll just go out and do the site visit, quick and easy, and get it done. But
Right.
the more information I have, the faster we can get out on our site visits, the better we can verify information, and the quicker we can get things done. But
You say you've only been here 2 years?
almost, yeah, January 15th was my 2 years.
What did they do? Put you down and have you read everything before you started?
No, it's just a
Seriously,
lot.
I mean, you are just so full of knowledge about all this.
No, it's just we have so many building permits come in that it's just you hit the ground running and you just
Wow.
work through them, especially with COVID. When
You didn't have nothing else to do, so
yeah,
you
I was
sit
just
there
working on
and
building
study,
permits. Yeah, no, we have so many different permits come through, and every permit is unique. Like no permits aren't cookie cutter. Every property is different. Every septic system's different. Every well's different. So you just kind of get a lot of experience really quickly working through them, and with how many different permits we work through, from sheds to garages to pools to brand new houses to rebuilds to interior renovations, there's just so much that goes into them that you pick up on a lot when you work through them.
Speaking of brand new houses, with brand new houses, would you guys come into play for, was it the sediment ponds? Is that what I'm thinking of?
Stormwater management.
that would be
Stormwater.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that would be stormwater management.
I knew that. I was
Yeah.
trusting.
Yeah, for new houses, just briefly, what we kind of work on for that is we do septics and wells.
Okay.
And what it comes down to, for new houses, make sure your well meets all your setbacks, but your septic system. And for new houses, we make sure your sizing for your septic system is correct. We review all the plans that you submit to us. We make sure you have enough repairs shown, because for new houses, you need to show a certain amount of repair systems to make sure it meets everything.
Right.
And those setbacks. And then usually, as long as we get good site plans, good information, new house permits aren't that bad. What we sometimes lack is the information. A lot of times the site plans for new houses would be lacking something like your repair systems, or people forget to put where their septic tank is proposed to go, and we need to make sure your setbacks meet all those. So new houses, not too bad. Mainly it's just me calling the contractor and being like, hey, your septic system isn't sized correctly, here's the correct sizing, or hey, can you put your tank on there, or show me this information. They send me a new site plan. It takes a couple days, a week or two for them to do that. I get it, I do the review, if everything's good, we move forward. So
Well, one thing, I know you had mentioned the stormwater management. We do get a little bit involved with that, with new houses, because, I guess off the roof gutters and all,
Right.
the requirements are now they gotta run that off into a dry well or something like that. So we gotta make sure that those setbacks are still maintained, especially to our well, and they can't, those, dry wells that they call them, they can't be within 100 foot of the well. So we're gonna be looking at those kinds of setbacks as well, and there's also certain minimum requirements, I think it's 25 feet off like septic trenches, that those, what we call stormwater management devices, have to be off of the things that we're looking at.
So what is a dry well?
So what it is, do you want to?
No, you go.
So it's kind of funny because there's two. We talk about like two different dry wells in our division. There's dry wells for stormwater management, which is really just it's kind of like a pit in the ground.
Okay.
And they run off, like when your runoff comes off your house, they'll go into these pits in the ground. So then you don't have to worry about like erosion, all this water seeping over the topsoil. They go into these pits, they seep into the ground. The other dry well we talk about, there's actually a septic dry well. It's a weird type of septic system. Sometimes drain fields can be lengthy,
Right.
50 feet, 100 feet long, and sometimes these smaller properties cannot handle these long dry wells. So sometimes you put it in, or drain fields, you put in a dry well, which is just a big, usually they're like 10 by 12, like a 12-foot diameter, and they're like 10 feet deep. And it works like a septic trench, except instead of being really long, it's wider and like a cylinder in the ground.
Okay.
But for the most part, dry wells, when we talk about stormwater management, they're just kind of pits in the ground that are filled, they block in, and your wastewater will run off of those, off of the house, and go into them, so you don't have to worry about all the runoff from when it rains or whatever to be like rushing over your soils and whipping up your soils and causing erosion, causing contamination, things like that.
I don't know if you can answer this or not, but with new houses and septics, this has just been in the back of my mind. When somebody wants to build a new house on a piece of property and it has to be septic and well, is there a minimum size property that they can do it on?
I believe for new lots created nowadays when subdivided, I believe it's 2 acres. Is what?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, Hartford County is in a kind of an interesting situation because there was a lot of lots created in Hartford County in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and they have older sizing requirements.
Right.
So if it's a created lot, we will try our best to do our review, and most of the time we can get a septic system in there and a future repair in there. But that's kind of like a lot of where the nitty gritty comes into is looking at these properties that are on the older side, old lots or whatever, and just doing what we can to do our reviews to make sure we can get a house in there, but it's also safe for the people living there and the environment around it. So that's kind of a lot of our reviews for those older lots can take a while because there's a whole lot we have to look in.
Right.
It's not a perfect 2-acre lot with a recorded septic reserve area and a good well. So we have to look at a lot of things to make sure everything kind of meets regulations, is safe for everyone. But we do our best.
So if somebody has any questions and they want to get in touch with you, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, they can call us.
They need the number.
What I recommend doing is giving the call to our main line number. It's 410-877-2300. That will be directed to our main line secretaries, and you can just kind of explain to them what questions you have, and they'll direct you back to the right division. Sometimes it'll be directed back to me in building permits. Sometimes it'll be directed to the soil percolation division if you had questions about that. We're always happy to answer questions. I have people call me all the time being like, hey, I want to put a shed in. How far do I have to be away from my septic tank? And I'll be like, okay, I can tell you that.
Right.
So we're happy to answer those questions if you give us a call. And I guess I can't stress enough, PIA requests are your best friend because the more information you have on your property, the more informed you'll be and the better decisions you can make.
Thank God I'm not on septic or well. That shed's looking better every time I think about it now.
It's okay, I live in Aberdeen, I'm on public water and sewer, so I'm good.
Yeah. You guys have anything to add whatsoever?
We have a website too. You can always go to our website for some information.
HartfordCountyHealth.com. Our services, environmental health, there's 2 things, consumer and resource. Click on resource protection and you'll see all the links there. They'll have well, septic, building permits. If you want to know other information, It's on there, and the phone number is 410-877-2300.
I have to admit, that's one of the things that I really missed during COVID was sitting down with the people from the Harford County Health Department and talking about all the different things they do and learning more. Now, as I said on the last podcast, I want to recommend a new podcast at the end of each episode. And somehow or another ties into the episode you just listened to. Now, granted, it was hard for me to find any podcast about septics and well waters and things such as that. But one of the podcasts I want to tell you about is from one of my sponsors, University of Maryland Medical Systems. They have a podcast, which is a very good podcast you love. It's called Live Greater, a University of Maryland Medical System podcast. Google it. You can find it. You could also go to the Chesapeake Podcast Network. It's right on there. That's ChesapeakePodcastNetwork.com. Again, this is a podcast. It's good. It goes into a lot of different things, whether it's about stress relief, anxiety, spinal conditions, arthritis, just such great things in there. So again, that's the Live Greater podcast. It's Live Greater, a University of Maryland Medical System podcast. Check it out. Go to ChesapeakePodcastNetwork.com. And remember, if you want to be part of the conversation or if there's somebody you want me to get on, just email me at rbennett, that's 2 N's, 2 T's, at HarfordCountyLiving.com. And I'll make sure that I get you on the conversation, or the person that you want on, I'll get them to join in on the conversation as well.